What's going on, guys, and welcome back to a very rare edition of a podcast on the Cameraman Ron channel. We don't do a lot of podcasts over here on the Cameraman Ron channel anymore. We've moved all of those over to the Morning Vibe, but this one was a little bit different. We had a very, very special guest in the studio today, so I wanted to post this one over here so everybody on the main channel got to see it. We've got Kaylee Lavach from Destin, Florida. She's impressed that I just got the name right, but I asked her right before we start. So there was no way I was getting that wrong because I was like, I'm going to ask her just like the second I hit record, and then that way I can't get it wrong. But Kaylee does some amazing stuff in the Destin area. She's hosted fishing shows. We're going to dive right in and talk to her real quick. We do have to hit them with the intro music because I always tell them, Kaylee, if we don't hit the intro music, they don't even know we started. So we got to hit the intro music. That's part of it. All right, dial that back. So we're going to dive right in with Miss Kaylee. Kaylee, can you just give us, like, we'll start here and then I'll dive a little bit deeper. Can you just kind of give us a synopsis of what you do in the social media world?
How much time do we have? No, I'm just kidding.
As much time as you need, girlfriend. We got it all day if that's what we need.
The shortest version possible is I am a social media manager for quite a few businesses over in Destin. I specialize a lot in restaurants and tourism, so boat rentals, food. And that kind of spurred into a Things to Do channel called To Do in Destin. Okay. So that is just ended up being a place where I wanted to feature my current clients and reshare their stuff to a big audience. And I found out it didn't exist, so I created it. So I have To Do in Destin, and then from there had spun off into, I have a large fishing page over there. I have the largest Crab Island page, a ton of tourism-driven things, all in the social media realm.
Awesome. So basically everything in your business model is driving business to Destin from outside. And the reason this model, and correct me if I'm wrong, the reason that this model works so well is everybody that comes to a tourist town is looking for something to do. They truly are. Very, very few people come to vacation in Destin or Pensacola or wherever you're going with the mindset of, we'll just play it by ear. Most people are planners, especially in today's day and age, and what you're giving them is an outlet to plan their vacation essentially all in one place.
Yeah, and people are visual, and they want to trust and like the person that is recommending their stuff. That's why you ask your friends. It's why you follow who you do on social. So my personal page is a little more personal. It's still tied to Do in Destin, but I have a lot of people that just watch my adventures for the day while I'm visiting new places. I'm taking them fishing. I'm showing them different avenues. I'm on a tiki. I'm at Crab Island. I'm doing all these things for my clients, but I've also made a personal brand with it too, and kind of built this audience of people that just know that I'm going to tell them quality things because I'm actually out there doing it.
Right. And that makes sense. And that's exactly what we kind of do on the Cameraman Ron channel from a fishing standpoint. You know, you guys always reach out and you're asking about spots or where were we. And most of the time it's very public places that most people can get to, with, especially for fishing from shore, Fort Pickens, 3 Mile Bridge, the fishing piers, stuff like that. And basically what Kaylee is doing is the exact same thing, only on a much, much broader scale, to where she's showing people the best restaurants. Very much like the PYT. The PYT is back there behind the camera. She is very new at this, but 100% she is doing that. So I'm going to start from the top. I'm going to ask you a few touristy based questions, and not to test your knowledge, just for my own knowledge. One thing I see commented all the time, and I know you're going to know the answer to this. I see so many people go out to Crab Island and they get disappointed because they walk out and they don't see that crystal blue water. I know the reason behind this, but it's not going to do me any good to tell you guys because you're not going to trust me. But I bet you trust Kaylee when she tells you. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, every picture of Crab Island over in Destin is this beautiful crystal clear blue water. That's what you're going to see online. But every now and then it's not like that. It's green. It's a little more dingy. Why does that happen? And when does that happen? And what should people watch for when they're coming over to the area for that?
Absolutely. I have had so many haters tell me that I'm photoshopping every photo and video if it's not, like, the crystal blue water wasn't there when I was there. The reality is it's a tide. Yep. Tides go up, tides go down, and where Crab Island is between the Gulf of Mexico and the Choctawhatchee Bay. So the crystal blue water is coming in from the Gulf of Mexico at high tide. High tide is when you want to be there to see that. The bay water coming in from Choctawhatchee is a little bit darker, more lake brackish water. That's going to be low tide. So you can check the tide chart. All you have to do is hit Google tide charts, Choctawhatchee Bay, Destin, and it will show you what time of day, because it varies every single day, yes. Time of year, moons, all of that matters. So you want to be there at high tide. Doesn't matter morning, afternoon, evening. Some people think it's bluer in the morning, and that's not true. No. It's whatever tide high tide is that day is when you want to be there.
Yeah, and I did know that just because. And here's the thing, and this is what always amazes me, and it's just a matter of people only consume what they want to consume. Because I promise you, if you look at anything Crab Island related, whether it's Instagram, I know they've got a couple Instagram pages, or YouTube stuff. If it is dedicated only to Crab Island, you will not have to look very far on that, and you will see a tide chart. Every single social media platform that shares Crab Island exclusive stuff shares the tide charts. This is no secret. And I know tourists don't understand when you come in why it's like that, but it is exactly what she said. Imagine like if you had a fish tank in your house and you had two different kinds of water in it, and it pushed out into a pipe every day, and one side of that pipe was crystal clear water and the other side was just a little bit dingier. If you leaned the tank that way and all that water pushed down to the pipe, all this crystal clear water is going to run down into the tank. That's the water coming from the Gulf. And then if you flipped it back, the dingier water is going to push in, but they never really mix. So that's why you get the big, nice blue crystal clear water. It's not Photoshop, folks. I promise you it's not. I've been there. It's literally one of my top 3 most beautiful places in the world. When you go over the Marlar Bridge, off of Okaloosa Island into Destin, if you catch it at the right time, it's magical.
It has been showing off lately too, man. The water has been insane about the last 2 to 3 weeks. It's crazy how blue it's been.
It is. It really, truly is that it's just been, you're right. I mean, and it's been that way on Pensacola Beach. We got some friends in from out of town, and that was the first thing they said. They're like, I don't know that we've ever seen the water look like this here. And that's true. I was out on the beach fishing this morning, and it's crystal clear right now. And hopefully it'll last for just a little while.
I think it should through the weekend at least. So.
Yeah, at least through the weekend. We've got a beautiful weekend of weather coming up. The wind's going to pick up a little bit, but no more rain. I think we're done with the rain for the rest of this week. We're going to have really good weather this coming weekend. So as you're doing, like when you're helping your social media clients, what kind of advice do you give them from a marketing standpoint, a social media standpoint? What kind of advice do you offer to them to try to bring in customers? Because you have to stand out when you're in a town like this, obviously, and everybody searches social media for everything you do. So whether it's a restaurant or whatever you're working with at the time, what is some of the advice that you give them to help make themselves stand out and draw in a crowd to them in a tourist place?
You really have to remind people why you're special and why you're unique. And that is kind of across the board in all marketing. I think a lot of business owners who run their own social are in your business every day, and you forget why people come there. Yeah, your food's great. What else? And it's having an outside brain come in to look at it from a perspective and say, okay, well, we need to show this, this, and this. And then they say, oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yep.
So and even if you can't afford to outsource it or you don't want to, even bringing in someone to just consult on it for an hour or two and give you some feedback. The other thing that I do to generate traffic is user-generated content. So I will reshare, tag the person, tag everybody they tagged in the photo. That gets them to share it, and then their friends are like, oh, look at what she ate there. That's got to be great. They follow it. It's kind of a snowball effect. And that has worked on every page I've ever ran, and that's really where a lot of my growth has come from.
Yeah, and Kaylee has got a huge following on multiple platforms. She's all over the place. We were talking about YouTube because you do have she has a fairly small YouTube channel, which is where you guys are seeing this. But I always tell people, like, don't judge a book by its cover, so to speak, because I see so many people, they'll jump on, like we don't have a very big following on TikTok. We talked about this a minute ago. And a lot of people, I've had people comment on my YouTube videos like, oh my gosh, I saw your TikTok like 6 months ago and you only had like 200 followers. I didn't think you had a social media presence. And it's like, well, I don't really have a social media presence on TikTok, but you have to remember there are multiple avenues which lead to multiple streams of income. You guys have heard me talk about this so many times. When you're in the social media world, it's so important to have multiple streams of income coming in, because at any given time, you guys know what we just went through with Facebook. That's been very, very well documented between me and you. We've been very transparent. When something like that happens, you have to have other stuff coming in, which is exactly what you've managed to do. Now, your website, To Do in Destin, tell us a little bit about that and what people are going to find when they get to that website.
Yeah, so from a tourism perspective, the goal of the website was really to answer the repetitive DMs that I would get all the time, like, where's the best place to stay? Or I'm having my bachelorette party, what do you recommend? All of these questions I kept getting, and so I've turned them into blog posts. They're also reels on my Instagram page and shorts on my YouTube channel, but just different questions I kept getting. And so there's a blog page. Every month I do an events page, which really tackles everything going on for that entire month in our community. So if you're traveling in for June on a certain weekend and you want to see if there's any events or festivals or live music, I've got all of that on there. But yeah, you can browse it. You can search different things on there. Really just a resource for planning your vacation.
Yeah, and I've got that link down in the description box below. So if you guys are looking for that, it is todoindestin.com. But it's super easy to find. If you're not watching on, your television, obviously if you're watching on TV, you just need to write it down because you can't click the links. I know you guys tell me that all the time. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about that. That's just the way the platform works. You can't click on online links on your television. We have a lot of people who watch on the main channel, that a little bit older audience, which we love and appreciate 100%. But they're like, I can't find this link you're talking about. It's just not any, but it's because they're watching on their smart TVs. And with that, you can't click on the link. So if you are watching on a smart TV, it is just todoindestin.com. Super, super simple to find. We're going to come back to the tourism stuff, but I can't go any farther without talking to you about your fishing background.
Yeah.
Because my first question is, how did you develop such a fishing background? Kaylee moved to the area from Nebraska. How did you develop such a fishing background in the area coming from Nebraska?
I did actually fish in Nebraska, but it was very different. Lake fishing.
Yeah.
And so...
not a lot of tarpon up in Nebraska, are there?
No, not a lot of fish that size in general in Nebraska. But I did grow up fishing. My dad always took me, my grandpa. And so moving here, I made some friends that owned charters, and it just kind of fell in love with this sport that I had experienced, but not to this degree.
Sure.
So, a lot of people in the Midwest, they just sit on a boat, drop a line, and drink a beer, and then you wait. And that's not fishing here. And so you drop a line. If you don't have a bite in 5 minutes, we're going to a different spot. It is a very fast-paced fishing. And it's so exciting. And so all my female friends that are like, I don't really like fishing, I'm like, that's because you haven't been fishing.
Yeah.
Like, you really haven't done it that way to fall in love with it like I did. So I spent a lot of time on the water, fishing with different friends, taking me out on charters, things like that. And then it turned into traveling. So like fishing in Puerto Rico and Louisiana and Costa Rica and all these places that I've loved. And then, that kind of spurred into, hey, we're doing a fishing TV show filmed over on 30A, and we need a host, and we need her to be female, and you actually can fish, and we've seen you on TV. You're great on TV. So let's do this. And so, yeah, I got to do that for 2 seasons, and that was an amazing ride.
What is the craziest thing you witnessed while you were hosting that TV show? Because there had to have been some moments. What was the craziest one off the top of your head that you can think of in the 2 seasons you were hosting that fishing show?
My cameraman fell off the boat.
Yes, that's what I want to hear right there.
Full board, tried to keep the camera above the water. That did not happen. And we actually had to finish that episode with a cell phone. He did save the memory card, thankfully, but we finished it just sideways on a cell phone.
And in case you guys are taking notes at home, salt water and camera equipment do not mix. Like, not even just a little bit. Like, if you drop your camera in a pool, you might make it. Maybe. I'm not saying for sure, but I've seen cameras that falls in a pool. If you drop it in a lake, you're kind of done too because of the mud. But I promise you, if you drop it in salt water, you're cooked. There's nothing you can do for that camera. Just go ahead and toss it out.
Yeah, that camera's a paperweight right now.
Yeah, there's nothing that it could do. What was the biggest fish you ever caught or saw caught while you were? Was it tournament style fishing, or was it just like educational? What kind of show was that that you were hosting at the time?
It was really a tourism show disguised as a fishing show.
Okay.
So we were taking local business owners, different people in the community fishing, and then I was talking to them and asking them questions about what they did here, what their business was, if people are traveling in, how do they utilize your services. But a lot of them, almost all of them, were novice fishermen, barely ever picked up a rod. So a lot of times
you would have fit right in on a Mako girl, let me tell you right now.
So they would, if they knew there was a big fish down there, they would hook me up with different bait than they would them, and I would be the one fishing for the big fish. So I have caught some monster amberjack, like 60, 70 pounds, a couple huge groupers. Never in season. You always catch the big ones when you have to release them.
Every time.
And then over on 30A, we actually have, because where we're at, there's no docks. So the boats have to launch straight off the beach, meaning they back their trailer right into the water, let the boat go, and leave. So to do that, you have to have a permit to drive on the beach, and there's really only, I think, 15 charters over there that can do that. So the water out in front of them is not overfished at all. So we can go 3 miles off the beach, and I can still see shore, and we're catching monster snappers, black snappers, all kinds of stuff. It's crazy.
And we have such a unique fishery here like that. I've talked to you guys before, and I'm sure you guys have seen the videos. In January, February, depending on the year, we have a tuna run that happens down in Navarre that they're catching tuna off the pier, and that pier is only 14 or 1,550 foot long, something like that. I think it is the longest pier on the Gulf Coast. Just because they put that little octagon thing out at the end to beat Panama City, because when Panama City built the twin piers, Navarre came in and extended their pier by like 50 feet to be longer than Panama City's pier. You really need to look that story up if you haven't. It's actually I'm saying that right. It is Navarre, right? Yeah. That has the long, I thought so. But you can catch tuna from the pier. So there's reefs that are a half mile offshore that you can catch. I mean, literally some of the biggest red snapper from a kayak that you could imagine. And they've built a really, really nice setup down there to get your kayak to the water in Navarre. But we have such a unique, this whole area, we have such a unique fishery like that we don't have to go, 80 miles offshore. I mean, if you get over, I was talking to some of my buddies on the East Coast, like up northeast coast, and I was like, hey, I want to catch some mahi. And they're like, yeah, we don't do that up here. You got to go like 65 miles offshore. But they have to go out to the Gulf Stream, which is way, way farther off the coast. I just didn't realize that. Now, when you get down into Miami and South Florida, they're catching them 3-4 miles offshore. We've done that with Darcy and them before. But it was wild to me that it's so different from North Florida to South Florida just being offshore, because that's a different animal over there for sure.
And it's something that I think when people travel here and they say they want to go offshore fishing, you can go offshore fishing and only go 5 miles, or you can go offshore fishing and you can go 90 miles. There's two different types of fishing in that respect. So people who say, oh, I could never deep sea fish, or the expectation, we need to be a little more clear on. So like when you book your charter, making sure you ask the right questions.
100%. And I was getting ready to talk about that, and I'm just going to ask that question, and maybe you can elaborate a little bit more. If you're coming to the area, because I get this question all the time, you guys ask me, what's a good fishing charter? Well, obviously, I've been out with a couple, but you have to find what you're looking for, because if you're looking for snapper or, mangrove snapper or something like that, pretty much any inshore charter, but what should people be looking for, and what questions should they be asking their charter captain if they're pre-booking a charter down here? What kind of questions should they be asking them, or what information should they be giving them to make sure that they're going to have the best fit when they get here?
I think you have to know what your expectations are of your fishing trip. Are you trying to just fill a cooler so you can eat for the next week? Are you trying to catch fish that are going to be a fun fight, but you'll have to release because they're not in season, or you can't keep them, they're too big? And there are captains that specialize in all of that. So doing your research on them, anytime I go fish somewhere, I'm on Instagram, on their website, I'm looking at what they're catching. I'm looking at, are you showing fish boards because you're filling a cooler? Or are you showing your clients holding one fish, big smiles, had the time of their life, didn't take home a single fish? So it's matching your expectations with your charter. So tons of charters in Destin and Pensacola in this whole area, but finding the ones that are going to do what you want to do so that your expectations are met.
Yeah. 100% agree with exactly what she said. I'm just asking you all the questions that people ask me, because they'll listen to you and they don't listen to me very much. Sometimes they do, but for the most part, they don't listen to me very well.
Yeah.
Number one, if your wife's coming with you and she doesn't care about fishing, set her expectation that if she sees a dolphin, the charter captain's going to leave. You need to set that, because I've seen so many wives, and this is no knock on wives, I'm just being honest. If your wife doesn't fish and she doesn't understand fishing and she agrees to go on a charter with you, number one, congratulations, you got a good wife. She's going on a charter with you and she hates fishing. But number two, the only thing she cares about when she steps foot on that boat is seeing a dolphin. Now, if you think I'm wrong, you just ask her, because I promise you, if she's not going out there to fish, she's going out there to see a dolphin. The first time that charter captain sees a dolphin, he's leaving. So just prepare her for that. I mean, am I wrong? I mean, I think that's pretty much hitting that on the head right there.
Yeah, you're not wrong. A lot of the ones that I've been out with will actually see the dolphins at the end when we come back through the pass. So there is reserved time for that, but not while we're fishing.
Not while you're fishing. It's funny because in the last video that you guys saw on the Cameraman Ron page, or actually it was last Monday, that I had a dolphin, and it wasn't half-tail. We have a famous dolphin over here. I don't know if you know about him. They call him half-tail. He was actually a caught dolphin, and he's dangerously docile for his own safety. He will come up and lay his nose on the side of your boat, which all the local fishermen here respect the fact that, don't touch him, stay away. But if tourists come out and rent pontoons, they just don't understand that, oh my gosh, here's this like beautiful animal and he's right here. But the other day, him and one of his buddies were just like, I was out fishing one of the bay wrecks, and it was just like, they're like jumping all over the place and trying to get me to feed them and like just doing all these tricks all over the front of the boat. And I'm like, all right, guys. So finally I had to like jet out of there. But everybody's like, why would you leave those? And I'm like, because I'm trying to catch fish. And it's like, it definitely spooks the fish and they kind of run in and they don't do that.
Well, dolphins are dangerously smart anyway. And I think if people aren't from here and they don't realize exactly how smart they are, they know the boats and they know who feeds them and they know where they need to be and what they need to do to get they're very smart.
I mean, I would venture to guess they're definitely the smartest wild animal. I mean, I don't know if that's a real scientific statistic or anything like that, but they're so smart. I mean, you're talking about a giant fish that will literally, or I guess they're mammals. I guess they're not technically fish, but whatever. If you put out a Spanish mackerel that you took home and froze, and they will literally toy with you. They will go out and they will pick it up off the bottom and they'll run with it. And as soon as you grab the rod, they'll let it go because they know they have enough sensories and feelings. They'll drop it and then they're like, crap. And then you'll put your rod holder back in the rod holder. And then the second you step away from it, it's zinging again. I mean, this is not hearsay. I've seen this happen on multiple occasions. And then all of a sudden you'll look up and there'll be a dolphin out there breaching and he's just laughing at you. Like, cause he knows what's up. So
100%.
So in all your travels, what is your favorite fish you've ever personally landed? Oh. That's a tough one when somebody's caught a lot of fish. She wasn't ready for that one.
I wasn't because I'm not I haven't gotten to do a lot of like big game fishing. So gotcha. I haven't gotten to do, any monster tunas or swordfish or sailfish or anything like that. But I've caught some pretty good sized mahi, which are probably one of my favorites because of the way they jump. And then they fight and it's kind of like, they're soaring out of the water and then all of these other fish come up with them. And so you're throwing out way more lines and bait and trying to catch them all. And it's like, I specifically remember one TV episode where the guest had never seen that, and the captain, they just stood there with their mouths open, and the captain was like, I need this rod, and give me that one, and we're trying to catch as many as we can, before they figure it out and leave. And but even the big mahi, seeing them come out of the water, like very similar to tarpon in that sense.
I mean, and let's be honest, Kaylee is a very, very beautiful young lady. She does post some great photos on Instagram, and let's be honest, there is no more beautiful fish to hold when you take it out of the water for a photo than a mahi.
Yes.
I mean, it's just the colors, man, when you first get them out of the water, I promise you it will be the most beautiful photo you have ever seen. It even makes some of my pictures look pretty when I'm holding a mahi. But I mean, in all seriousness, it is one of the most beautiful fish to photograph. And that's why you see so many models that are on Instagram. They're out trying to catch these bull dolphin because it does make for an incredible photo opportunity when you get that in the boat, as long as you get on it. Now, they lose their color very quickly. A lot of people don't realize that. I've had people, that have messaged or commented, and they're like, man, I put my mahi in the cooler, and I took a picture of it when it got back to the dock, and it just wasn't the same. And it's not. I mean, these fish lose color within minutes. It's not you can't put them on ice, because when you do that, they're just going to turn down to a gray silver. But when you first take them out of the water, man, they are just, especially if you get them out green. If you can manage to get one in the boat before they wear themselves out, it's one of the most beautiful pictures you could take.
We just got back. We went 60 miles offshore, which was the furthest I'd ever been fishing, and we caught a couple that were like silver blue, like bright blue, just because of the watercolor. And just seeing that for the first time, like come out of the water, a huge one in that. But it turned green within 3-4 minutes getting it on the boat. So I don't have a picture of it because we were fighting the other ones before we could even get a picture. But seeing that was incredible. Yeah.
And what she's talking about, in case you guys, some of the audience that's not as familiar with fishing, when she's talking about some of the others, when you catch a mahi, most charter captains, if you get, like they call them chicken size, if you get one of the smaller ones to the boat, they typically will leave them in the water because it draws other mahi, because they're going crazy and they don't understand what's happening. And also it'll draw all the other mahi in because they think they're feeding. And at that point, you can just start kind of ripping them out. And a lot of times, if you haven't already, hooked the bull or the cow, within a matter of a few minutes, they will show up, because every pod or school of mahi is going to have a bull mahi and it's going to have a cow mahi, and they're both really, really big. 9 times out of 10, if you hook one of those small ones, if you're on a big enough weed line or a big enough school of fish, if you leave that by the boat for a few minutes, it's just a matter of time before those big ones show up, and you're going to have at least a crack at them, because they're in a feeding frenzy at that point, and they'll hit anything. So what's as far as just sheer size, what's the biggest fish you've ever pulled in the boat?
That 70-pound amberjack.
Okay.
Yeah. And I have a picture. I'm holding it with the captain behind me. And like you can just see on both of our faces like how crazy of a catch that was. Because I mean, and that's an insane fight, and your rod hits the side of the boat, and you're just like with everything you've got. Like that was probably the biggest, and I love that. I love to feel the fight of the fish. I want both hands. I want to try to dance with it, pull up, reel down, the whole thing. Like that's fishing.
And we talked about this before we got started, filming this morning. So much of social media has gone. I'm seeing electric reels. I mean, which is fine, to each their own. I mean, I know everything has a place, but I see these guys and they're just like, and then it's just wait. I'm like, where's the excitement in this? Like, you need to fight. Like, at least get it up out of the structure and then fight it. But I get it. I mean, some of these guys are fishing in 1,000 foot of water.
That's hard.
To pull a 70-pound, or a 40 or 50-pound fish out of 1,000 foot of water, it's going to be next to impossible. So I understand the purpose of it. But I'm like you. Like, I was on my kayak yesterday morning, and I was just fishing down here by the Brinkets Bridge, and I was using big blue crabs, and I knew I was trying to catch the big nasties that are hanging around there, and I hooked one. And I mean, when you have to lean to one side of your kayak to make sure that it's not about to flip you, like that's what it's all about. Like you are in a competition with the fish at that point, and neither one of you really have an advantage to start. But that's fishing. It's like you said, that's the dance, and that's what it's all about.
My favorite part for sure.
Oh, for sure. Back to the tourism piece for it. Aside from the fishing, I know Destin is known for what it's called. What it has a nickname, right?
The luckiest little fishing village.
That's it. I knew it was something like that because it's on the sign there. What are, aside from the obvious things that draw people, what do you think some of the hidden things that draw people to Destin are?
We actually have so many events, and that was my biggest surprise when I moved here. Is I kept hearing about these festivals and craft beer and tequila and tacos and all these things. I kept hearing about them after the fact when people would post the photos and the recaps. And it was like disheartening because I'm like, oh my God, I would have loved to come to that, which is part of what spurred me to start to do in Destin. But I'm also the lead event director for the Destin Seafood Festival. It's a 3-day, largest and longest standing at 45 years that we have over there. And people travel in from the country all over for that. And that's crazy to me. Like, we are a fishing and a seafood community. It just didn't cross my mind that they were booking vacations strictly for that. And I'm hearing that more and more. Like, we have amazing festivals and people are traveling here just for that.
God, yeah, and that was one of the biggest, when we moved here from Kentucky, that was one of the first things we noticed was there's something going on every weekend.
All the time.
It's at home or in Kentucky, and correct me if it's way different in Nebraska, you might have like 2 or 3 festivals a year that a lot of people go. I mean, you'll have like the little stuff, the county fairs, the little small stuff, but as far as like big festivals, if you might have 2 a year, one in the spring, one in the fall, and that's it. Yeah. And then, but you get here and it's like every single weekend we've got something going on that locals, tourists alike are going to enjoy and have a good time at. So that it's awesome to have a resource to find those things, because you're 100% right. It's not always front and center unless you drive down Palafox and you see the banner. You might miss it. You might not even realize that it was going on. So this one might be tough. I don't even know if you can legally answer this question, but I'm going to ask it. We'll see. What is your number one? I've never been to Destin. It's my first time. I've only got one restaurant I can go to. Where are you sending me? Oh. And remember, I'm fat, so it's got to be good, right?
All right. Do you like seafood?
It doesn't matter. Just most people that are coming here, yes. I can't eat shellfish because I'm allergic, but pretend that nothing's off the table for me and I like about everything. I'm going to walk away and be like, that's the best dining experience I possibly could have had in Destin.
I probably shouldn't legally answer this.
If you can't, that's fine.
No, I mean, I send a lot of people. Really, what we have in Destin, a lot of our restaurants cater to very different things, from dive bars to fine dining to seafood. But hands down, Beauchamp's is going to be incredible seafood, great ambiance and environment. They have a huge deck out back. They have live music. They're right on the sand. Marina Cafe is right next door to them, and that's going to be a little more fine dining, white tablecloth. But
heard of Marina Cafe?
Yeah, so. But very similar. They're side by side. Those are probably 2 of the top in town.
Okay, awesome. And then I'll ask this one, and then I won't make you pick any more best of, because I do like this, and we're going to get very food specific. The best key lime pie in Destin. If you don't know, and I didn't realize this before I moved here, our area, and maybe all of Florida, I don't know, is known for key lime pie. Like every restaurant's got their array of desserts, and every restaurant has a key lime pie. where are you going to get the best key lime pie?
You know, my foodie friend is probably going to hate me for this. She is always the dessert person, and I am not. So I have heard.
Uh-oh. We got her on one. Finally, we got
because
one.
Because I'm so much more of like a breakfast or an entree person.
I mean, look, they can look at us and understand which one of us is going to be a better judge of desserts. I mean, I have a very intelligent audience. They're like, that was a stupid question. You'd be much better suited to answer that than her. I mean, I know it's fine. So
I did have an amazing key lime dessert at Marina Cafe. And I don't fully remember. I think it was a pie, or it was similar to that he did something different to it, but it was incredible.
Yeah, and there's certain restaurants. Have you ever eaten at the Grand Marlin over in Pensacola?
No.
So they have. You brought this up early on. All restaurants, especially in a tourist town, have what I call a neon sign. And if you don't know what I mean by that, it's the thing that's flashing out front that's going to make you pull off. And for the Grand Marlin, it's their angel chips. And they're basically like loaded fries, but they're like these spiral cut potatoes that they fry. They're amazing. It's one of those things that people come from all over and they'll eat there, and they could have the most terrible food in the world, which they don't. I'm not saying that they have amazing food, but people would still go there for that one thing. They've got that one thing on their menu that you're like, okay, they got a subpar burger, but I'm going to go there to eat this. So that's cool. But most of those, I've noticed that most of your more white cloth table restaurants have got the best desserts.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like a specialty thing.
I think so. And I mean, if you think about it, it almost has to be, because you're going to go there for a specific meal. You're probably going to get full. So they can't have a basic, because of the price point and what they're doing. I would think it would be a struggle for them to sell desserts unless they had something super, super extravagant.
I agree.
And I know you don't do as much family stuff, but as far as like if somebody's coming here for family and anywhere in our area, is this a good place for families to visit?
Families are one of our largest audiences over in Destin. We cater to that with several restaurants, hotels, our huge Buccaneer pirate ship, our dolphin cruises. There are so many kid-friendly activities. And a lot of the bigger areas like Harbor Walk Village will actually put on events for kids. So silent discos, there's a mermaid pirate event that happens one night a week. Just different events like that so that your kids always have something to do. Yeah,
and I think the common misconception is, and the reason I asked Kaylee that question was because I just completely blocked the mic. That was weird. Did you hear that? Mm-hmm. She probably can't hear it, but we can hear it. When I put my hand up, it goes really soft. It's funny. But the reason I asked Kaylee that question, certain areas have got reputations for being more, in my mind, as far as when people are booking a vacation, when you think of a family vacation in Florida, Orlando is obviously, that's the first thing people think of just because of Disney World, things like that. Panama City Beach kind of has a reputation of a college town. And it's not that way anymore. I mean, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but it's really dialed back. Panama City 10 years ago was like spring break was their creme de la creme time of the year. And that's kind of dialed back and has become more family friendly. I would say that Destin and Pensacola Beach are probably the two #1 family destinations in all of Florida.
Yeah, it feels that way to me living in Destin. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not being biased. I just think when you think of more like, obviously Miami, I don't think people's looking at Miami. And again, this is not a knock on Miami, the beaches down there. I'm not saying that. You get over into the Fort Myers, Naples area, it's more people think of it more like a retirement area.
Yeah.
A lot of older people live over there. South Beach, that's more of like your young, hip college crowd. But then you get up into the Panhandle, and I think we are known much more for a family place. And it could just be by geographical nature. I think a lot of people, if you've got small kids, you may not want to drive the extra 10 hours to get to the Florida Keys or to Miami. So I think by nature, we're close to kind of everything. It doesn't matter whether you're coming from out west or, Kentucky, where we're from, or Nebraska, you're looking at a 10 to 15, 16-hour drive, where if you're going all the way to South Florida, you got to tack on another 7 or 8 hours to that.
Oh, yeah. That's why we really blew up, right after COVID when the beaches opened back up. It's because everybody could drive here, and you didn't have to fly. You didn't have to worry about any of that. And yeah, so now I feel like we're sort of evening back out into our regularly scheduled tourism, because we had just been bombarded the last couple of years.
We have. It was even in Pensacola. If you're not familiar with Pensacola and Pensacola Beach area, so it's actually separated by a whole town, and a lot of people are shocked when they get here to realize that. So, like, if you see Sarah's videos and you see her on Palafox, that's here in downtown Pensacola. We are not at the beach. You actually have to go across 3 Mile Bridge, and then you go through Gulf Breeze, and then you travel into Pensacola Beach, which is 15 minutes away, something like that. But the last 2 summers, man, it was like in 2021 and 2022, the bridge to get into to Pensacola Beach was just absurd. I mean, and not the big bridge. I'm talking about the Bob Sykes Bridge going from Gulf Breeze to Pensacola. And it was exactly what you said. We were just, people were waiting 4.5, 5 hours to eat at Peg Leg Pete's. And that's not common. That's not normal here, but it's exactly what you said. People were budgeting way different than what they used to budget. And let's be honest, at the end of the day, if you take 7-8 hours off of a drive, that's a lot of gas money. So we were getting a lot more tourism influx. People that before were going to St. Petersburg and New Smyrna and, Daytona even, they were coming here instead for that exact reason.
Yeah.
So as far as like from a social media manager standpoint, when you go out and you get ready to do something as far as like to promote a brand, do you have like a plan in place when you go out to create that content, whether it be short form photos, or do you kind of just go experience and then it comes to you as you're rolling through the process of being there?
So it's kind of different answers with To Do and Destin when I'm going out to create content to promote a business that I'm not working with already or that I've not experienced. I kind of just let myself be in the moment.
Sure.
And I'm capturing what I'm doing, what I'm feeling, what I'm seeing, in a way that I know I can make a video that will be watched or that people will be into. If I'm running your social media, my strategy is a little bit larger because
Sure.
I have to not only create content for one post, I'm trying to create 30 to 40 pieces of content while I'm out there. So the way that I shoot things is different. I'm trying to build 3 or 4 or 5 reels in my head instead of just one.
Sure.
So my strategy is different. I may set things up a little differently and work with the staff and do things that a normal guest maybe wouldn't get to experience. So it just kind of depends on why I'm there and what I'm creating it for.
Sure. And I think, obviously if you're out creating content and you're promoting that business, I think you have to highlight, specific things. So I could definitely see where it would be more important to have a plan in place. But I do think it's cool. I've followed Kaylee for a little while on Instagram and other things. And a lot of the places she's been to, I've experienced as well. And a lot of the stuff I've seen you do, I'm like, yeah, that's spot on. Like, it's one of those things where I've never looked at your stuff and been like, she's really, really overselling this. And I think that's one of the cool things because not everybody does that. There are definitely influencers out there and there's social media folks that they paint and you're going to paint things in their best light. I'm not saying you're not going to do that, but sometimes it's sold as one thing and it's something completely different. And I mean, it reflects negatively on you. I mean, a lot of influencers don't realize that if they promote a brand and they promote it in a manner that's not necessarily bad, but they promote it in a different light than what it truly is, it has a negative impact on your influence and people continue to come to you for resources of where you're going.
Yeah, I'm in a really tricky spot because I'm half influencing the public and I'm half working with businesses. And I'm in this space where like I can't go and visit a business and then post on my channel that I had the most terrible time.
Sure.
Because more businesses will not work with me.
Right.
Now, that could be the honest review. So the compromise is that I just don't post anything.
Yeah.
And I work with the business to try to get that up to my expectations. And that's a tricky area because I have a lot of foodie friends with large pages and they're like, well, what happens if you go there and it sucks? And it's like, I'm not into like tearing down small businesses.
No. And that's, you guys hear us say all the time, and I'll give you a prime example, and it's an entirely different world, but it's the same thing. So I was fishing out at 3 Mile Bridge a couple videos back, and I'd bought, some of my buddies had bought hooks because I'm an owner guy. You all know that. I only use owner hooks, but my buddies had bought hooks and they kept breaking. And everybody's like, man, you got to put them on blast. Well, there's a couple reasons I don't do that. And I definitely want you to chime in here. One, I may not have been using that for the intentions that it was made because I have no idea what they bought. They could have bought something that was for freshwater catfish, and I'm out here using it at 3 Mile Bridge. So that's the first thing. I'm not going to put a company on blast. It could be a one-off, default pack of hooks. Anything can happen. But when you do that, you guys have got to keep in mind, I get reached out to, and this is where I'm going to bring you in, every single day to promote products for companies. Now, you guys don't always know when I'm promoting those products because I promise you everything that I promote on this channel, I'm not putting it in your face and be like, hey, this is an owner hook. You should buy them. a lot of it is just translucent marketing to where I'm using it, and by nature, you guys end up using it as well. So if I start putting people on blast, I'm not going to get those calls anymore. No one's going to call me like, hey, we want to send you hooks. And that's a great perk of this job. I mean, let's be honest. So just exactly what you said, you can't start just putting people on, especially small businesses.
No, I am one, and I've really been one. And I know how one off day from one off employee, can really ruin the experience for a guest. And I want to give them the chance to make that right and to prove that that was just a one-off. And I'm not saying like, oh, I had a bad experience, but I'm never going to post you. I'm just going to come back another time, and we're going to try round 2, and we're going to work to make it better. But I used to answer reviews for some of my restaurant clients, and it was just insane the things that people would complain about.
Yeah.
And clearly I'm reading these like that's like a one-off, one employee out of 100 that day. Like, we have to have a little bit of grace with everybody.
Well, and it's funny because on the Morning Vibe, on our other podcast channel, we've been doing a full series where we've been bringing in bartenders, servers, different people from the service industry, just talking about what it's like working in the service industry of a tourist town. We had servers in this past week, and one of the things they said was there's so many things as a server that are beyond your control. There's so many things that go on in the kitchen but it's like that with every job. You become the face of whatever restaurant you're working at because you're who they're talking to. So in that customer's mind, some people who don't understand how it works, you're the CEO, you're the janitor, you're the cook, you're the server, you're the guy that stocks the beer, you're the guy that refills the water. Like, they look at you as everything. And it's not necessarily fair, but it is the way it is. But I tell people all the time, like, you have to be lenient with these guys. Like, they're doing the best they can, and don't complain if it's one of those deals where if you've been there 4 times and the burger sucks and you want to leave a review, I'm with you. Maybe they just maybe that review will help them have better hamburgers. But don't walk in there the first time and have a bad experience and then just absolutely put them on blast, because you guys don't understand what reviews do in today's society. It's way different than it was 10 years ago.
It's a killer.
So on that basis, is that something you do with your clients, is work for them to help them get better reviews or to help them push to get reviews at all?
I can. It's individual strategy with each business.
Sure.
So we usually have a sit down and we talk about what is your goal with social media? What's your goal with your marketing? Do you want more reviews, or you just need a social presence? You don't care if anybody comes in from that? Like, kind of what are your goals with doing all of this marketing and this stuff? And surprisingly, it's not always like, I want to make $1 million. Like, that's not always everybody's goal.
Sure.
So I really have to dial in, get theirs, what they're trying to achieve, and then make sure that I'm able to accomplish that before we work together.
Have you ever, I don't want names, have you ever like sat down with somebody and just had to walk away and was like, no, I'm not going to be able to work with you? Yeah,
there's been a handful of people that I've met with that I couldn't, or I didn't have the capacity to create what their expectations were from social media. Now, working in this world, I understand that, social media is a long game. You don't start an Instagram today and have 30 people in your door by tomorrow. Like, this is a months and months of building and awareness and branding and all of these things. And my job is just to get them in the door. What they buy and how their experience is not on me. Sure. So we have to align on a lot of that before I'll work with somebody, because it's just too stressful otherwise.
Have you ever told a client no just because they sucked? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, let's just. Again, I don't want names. I'm just saying, there has to have been a time where you walked in and you're like, there is no hope for you. You're going to get shut down.
If their reputation preceded them in the community, I have said no, because I cannot associate my brand with any negativity across the board. But I'm also very discreet with that too. And it's,
yeah. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you would walk in and be like, oh, had a meeting with ABC restaurant today. Those guys are terrible and I'm not working with them. I mean, but just absolutely, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes in the social media world that the audience just doesn't see that we do. And you guys, I'm very open with my audience about this. They know, we've talked about it multiple times. And that's one of the things. Sometimes, no matter what you're doing, you just have to say no. There's been content creators where I've not collaborated with them, and it's just because I really didn't feel like they would line up with my audience and what my audience liked. And that's no knock on them. What they're doing may work for their audience. So no judgment or knock on them. But when I take a step back and I look at their channel and I'm just like, that's probably not going to fly with my audience, because again, my audience is my brand, just like everybody that you influence is affected by your brand. it's okay to say no. You know, if you're an up and coming content creator or a social media influencer, it's okay to say no. And just like Kaylee said, you're not trying to put somebody on blast. That's not what I'm telling you to do, but it's okay to just take a step back and be like, this probably is not a good idea for me to do because it could hurt the brand that I'm trying to build for myself.
Yeah, things are so much easier in business and life when you're aligned with what you really enjoy, what you believe in, and what you want to do. So, you know, and I've told people in the past, like, I really work with fun clients. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I don't want a dentist, and I don't want an insurance agent, and I don't want a car dealership. Like, I want tiki boats, and I want restaurants.
What do you mean? You don't think dentists can be fun?
Not that they can't be fun.
I'm just joking.
I don't want to spend my brain power constantly researching and thinking about content when all these tours and things already align with my brand and what I'm doing, and it's a natural fit. And that's how this has gotten to be the beast that it is that everything lines up. Everybody that I work with can be promoted on all my channels. I can give them max exposure and max reach. And it really started by saying no, you know?
Have you ever ran into a situation where, you know, you were promoting one client and another client kind of got upset, or not upset, but hurt, like you were out promoting them because that person like took off or something like that?
Not that they take off. I think sometimes if people are watching and they think one client gets promoted more than the other, but honestly, unless you're on social media 24/7 like I am, you're only seeing that one piece that you logged on. You're not seeing the 24 hours a day of all the other things I've posted about you. So, you know, so it's a give and take. And honestly, all of my clients are very cool. We have great relationships. They text me. We're friends. Like it's less of a business. And so we can have those conversations where they're like, oh, well, I saw that you did. And I'm like, hey, let's talk about it. Yeah. And so we don't ever have any issues. But again, it's because I only take clients that really align with me and my personality.
Now, I've heard you mention the Tiki a couple times. Yeah. So I'm assuming you do some stuff with the Tiki Bars.
The Pensacola ones too.
Oh, okay.
The cruising Tikis.
So if you guys don't know what these are, I promise you've seen them if you've been to our area, and you may have had questions about it. To me, this is one of the most, I've never done or looked into the ones in Pensacola. Where do they even go here? Do they just go out in the ICW?
Well, they run to the beach because they've stopped at Sneaky Tiki, like the bars over there.
Okay.
So they do have, and then they have sunset cruises.
Okay. I was just, and that was a true question. Like I've seen them here, but I didn't know where they went. But like in Destin, they take you to Crab Island. So you can get on the Tiki Bars. And what they are, they're just like these big octagon floats that's a tiki bar that you can ride. They have motors. You bring your own alcohol, correct?
Yeah, they're all BYOB.
Yeah, and you bring, but it's a really, really cool way to go over to Crab Island, because if you're not familiar with Crab Island, and I'm sure you've gotten this question, or if you haven't, I'm surprised because we get it all the time. Crab Island is not actually an island. Right. So many people come and they're like, I went out to Crab Island and it was covered in water. I'm like, well, it's always covered in water. It's just a sandbar, but they call it Crab Island because it's an underwater island that's right there in the pass. But so many people have I was like, I took especially when the water taxi was a big thing. So many people would come and book. Do they even still do that?
You can't legally run a taxi because you cannot drop off people at Crab Island.
Okay, but they used to be able to.
You can do a taxi. Well, it gets confused because you can do a taxi in harbor. So if you are in a bar or restaurant in the harbor, you can call the water taxi and it will take you from one restaurant to the next. It just can't take you out into Crab Island.
Got you. Because didn't they have the pontoons for a while? That was why Redneck Beach got shut down. Was because those guys were like taking pontoons and like they almost killed a child or something like that. But so many people would do stuff like that, and then they would get out there, or they would rent a jet ski, and then they would get out there and they would realize there's no place to get out of the water. Now, if you plan on being in the water all day, that's perfectly fine, but you do need to know going out there that it is not an actual island; it is underwater. But I promise you, if you come to the area, it's a must do in my mind. It's crowded in the summer. Be prepared for that. But man, it's such a good time. Everybody just chills out. They play volleyball. They've got the blow up courses. I don't know what those things are called. We tried that one time, not for heavy people. In case anybody at home is wondering, you definitely try because it's a lot of fun. If you make it to the top, you're going to beat everybody down. But getting to the top is like a whole other level of like fitness that I was not prepared for that day.
Well, they took away the inflatables.
Oh, did they really?
There's a new ordinance: you cannot anchor overnight. So there is inflatables. Crab Island Adventure Tour will actually take you out to their own private ones that are off Crab Island. You'll spend 2 hours on the trampoline and jumping around the inflatables, and then 2 hours they drive you to Crab Island. So
okay, so we got to talk about this.
That's
this is something new, so I didn't realize that. So, like all the restaurants and stuff now are not there either?
No, they are, but they have to pull off at dark and then pull back in sunset.
So do they take them all the way back to the harbor? Okay, so it's not terrible. I mean, if you've not, again, if you've not ever been there, it's going to be a struggle to understand what we're talking about. But they actually have big restaurants on platform boats that are out on Crab Island. And used to, they put, when did this change?
2 years ago.
Okay, so I've just not been up on the times. But so used to, like, probably Memorial Day weekend, which is coming up this weekend, I would venture to guess is when they went out there, probably all the way through Labor Day. They were just there. They stayed anchored out there all the time. They took like little dinghy boats or something like that to get out to them, and then they were just always there. But you're saying they can't have those out there overnight.
Yeah, they made it a national park, which changed a lot of the rules.
Okay.
So now everybody has to pull off and then pull back on.
Gotcha. I didn't realize that they had changed that into a national park. There's a couple different access points if you're wanting to access. We've talked a lot about Crab Island, and hopefully we haven't overwhelmed just talking about that, because I know there's so much more to do over there. But I know that's such a huge tourist draw. If you're wanting to come like to Destin and you want to be on a boat and but you're not really wanting to fish, what are some options for you over there that get you on the water? Other things that you can do that's non-fishing related?
There are larger shuttle boats for, dolphin tours, or there's a couple that actually go fast. So it's more of an excursion than a dolphin boat, but they're large boats that hold 30, 40 people. So you can just buy a seat on there. It's affordable.
Sure.
The other thing with the Tikis, they also do like sunset cruises, and you can cruise through the harbor and see all the lights. So that's after dark. They do fireworks cruises. A lot of the boats do. You can buy a seat on a boat, and they'll take you out at 9 o'clock when the fireworks go on Thursdays.
Yeah.
So you can watch them from the water. These are all great options too, because if you don't want to drive yourself, or if you're traveling as a couple, or if you're traveling alone, you can buy it just a seat and make friends. Like the Tikis only hold 6, but the seats are sold separately.
Yeah.
So 2 of you can go on a date night on a Tiki and meet 4 different friends and just have a great time. So there are so many. I would check the harbor first. There's where most of them dock at, but there's so many options for just getting a seat on a boat for a few hours for fairly inexpensive.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was hoping you would touch on, because there are so many ways to get on the water. A lot of people think you have to rent a jet ski, or you have to do a party boat, or you have to do a fishing charter. That's just not the case. There's so many options down there. You can correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but we basically call them walk-on boat excursions. Basically to where you don't have to. It's like you can do a walk-on charter. A lot of charter captains, like on a Wednesday, if they don't have a trip, they'll put it out and be like, "Hey, I'm going to do a walk-on trip tomorrow. It's $150 a person." So what that does for you is, if just like you said, if you don't have the $600, $700, $800 or whatever it is, depending on what you're doing, to do a fishing charter, it gives somebody an option. If you're just down here with all your family and they don't want to go, and you don't want to spend $600-$700 to go on a fishing charter, you can spend $150 and go do a walk on. Now you're going to be on there with 3 or 4 other dudes that you don't know, but that's part of the fun of it. Like you get out there and you're like, everybody starts, immediately you're going to bond because you're out there fishing together. I mean, nobody can be mad at each other when you're fishing ever. I don't care what walk of life you come from. But that's a very, very unique opportunity. I didn't realize they had that on like the sunset cruises and that kind of stuff as well.
Well, yeah. And the best part is that when people come and they're on vacation, like by default, they're happy.
Yes.
They're excited to be there. So it's not weird to be on a boat with strangers, no matter if it's by yourself or 2 people or 4 people. Like, you will bond with these people and have a great time because everybody's just excited to be on vacation. I've never grabbed a seat on one of those boats and had a bad time.
No, never, ever. So, well, we are getting really, really close to running out of time. Is there anything that I need to touch on that I haven't touched on about tourism over in Destin that you would just like to add? So I know I've asked a lot of questions, but if there's anything you would like to chime in and just have an open platform to speak, I'd love to have that opportunity.
I mean, I guess I want to just say that there are so many ways that you can visit Destin without having to spend through the roof. And I think, a lot of people equate Destin with expensive, and it can be, sure, but you can also come and stay in an inexpensive hotel, because if you're just sleeping there, most people I just need a place to sleep. Then you can be on the beach all day. There are so many ways to do it. It's kind of like Vegas. You can go to Vegas and high roll, or you can go to Vegas and stay on Fremont Street and pay nothing. I mean, there are ways if you do your research, and don't be afraid to send me a message. I get them all day, every day, with people questions, looking for certain things. I have been stumped a few times by people asking me, surprisingly, even though I know the town like the back of my hand. So I'm always interested in helping out. So don't be afraid to ask if you're looking for something.
Awesome. And we did some pre-talking before. If you guys have not tuned in over on the Coastal Country side, make sure you guys check Sarah's channel out on Coastal Country. Kaylee and Sarah are going to be trying to shoot a couple videos here in the very, very near future. Sarah's very, very similar to what Kaylee's doing, on the YouTube side of things. So I think that'd be a great collaboration for you guys to see. But 100%, thank you so much for coming and sitting down with us, spending a little bit of time with us today. truly appreciate it. If you guys are, I'm going to link everything down in the description box below. I don't even want to try to go through all the social media because I'm just going to have her text them to me because she's everywhere. But the main thing is todoindestin.com. If that's the main thing you're looking for, check that one out if you're not able to click on the links. I'll link all of her Instagram, all that stuff down below so you guys can get access to Kaylee. Does a great job on social media. And again, thank you so much for coming in and sitting down. I know it's a little bit of a haul over here from Destin. It was raining today, but we truly appreciate you coming in and sitting down with us.
Yeah, it was great. If anybody wants to check out the fishing show too, I do think there's still some episodes up, even though it's not airing anymore. So share that too.
Yeah, we'll put that in the link down there as well. So, but yeah, awesome. So, and we'll definitely put her YouTube channel. Let's get her to 1,000 subscribers. Like, I know you guys can do that. Just go on there and just subscribe. Again, it doesn't cost anything, but she's at like 7 something. Let's at least go ahead and get over the 1,000 subscriber mark. And that way the cameraman Ron Cam Fam was good for something for Miss Kaylee. So, as always, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I truly hope you guys appreciated this one. If you did, give it a great big thumbs up. If you're new here to the Cameraman Ron channel. I was going to say the morning vibe. I get really confused when I do the podcast. If you're new here to the Cameraman Ron channel, make sure you smash that subscribe button 2023 style. As always, folks, make sure you find a way to make somebody smile. You never know. It just might change the world.